I used to believe silence was just the pause between words, the quiet before a chuckle, or the exhale after an argument. But that evening, when her phone screen glowed and her voice faltered, I discovered silence could be something heavier. Something absolute. She said she was spending the weekend at her sister's place. It wasn't out of the ordinary. They were tight, or so she kept insisting. "Leela's struggling," she'd say, her gaze tender, her tone laced with worry. "She needs me right now." I didn't push back. That night, I even helped her toss her suitcase into the trunk, pressed a kiss to her temple, and watched her car's taillights fade into the dark. She had on that navy jacket I adored, the one she wore when we'd huddle on the sofa during stormy weekends, our fingers brushing in a shared popcorn bowl. I remember thinking she looked stunning, even from a distance. That's the last picture I have of her before the truth began to fracture the scene. But it wasn't her who broke it. It was Leela. I hadn't meant to run into her that night. I ended up at her apartment because her boyfriend, Nate, invited me over to catch the game. Nothing fancy, beers, pizza, a couple of his buddies. He didn't mention Leela would be there. I walked in, jacket still wet from the rain, and saw her. She was sprawled on the couch, laughing, hair swept behind her ears, sipping a glass of red like she wasn't supposed to be hosting her sister. "Hey," she said, standing to give me a quick hug. "You here for the game too?" I forced a smile, but my mind was already racing. I nodded slowly. "Thought you were out of town." Leela's brow creased, her eyes blinking twice. "Nope." "Why?" That's when my phone buzzed. Her name, Amelia, lit up the screen. I answered, stepping a few feet toward the hall, still within earshot. She said she'd just arrived at Leela's, that they were about to crack open a bottle of wine and watch some cheesy rom-com like always. "She's right here with me," she said. I didn't know what I expected, maybe a nervous laugh, a stumble, a weak excuse. But all I got was silence, not a defensive silence, not even a guilty one, just hollow. It stretched, endless and resonant, until I could hear my own pulse pounding in my ears. I glanced down the hall and caught Leela's puzzled look. I stared at Amelia's name glowing on my phone, still connected but mute. That silence, it spoke volumes. I hung up. I didn't storm out, didn't confront Leela. I just grabbed a beer from the fridge and sank onto the couch, the game already blaring, the guys cheering like nothing had changed. I don't think I blinked for a solid 10 minutes. That silence roared in my chest, louder than anything on the TV. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't face the chance of seeing her car in the driveway or pretending I wasn't the guy who just caught his wife in a lie. Instead, I checked into a motel a few exits down the highway. The sheets were rough, the ice machine outside my door rattled all night. But it gave me a place to think, a place to sit with that silence. The next morning, I started digging. I wasn't the suspicious type, or so I thought. But when trust shatters like that, you start flipping over every stone you once ignored. I checked our shared calendar. She'd marked the weekend as family time, Leela. I pulled up our joint credit card statement. There it was, charges at a trendy downtown hotel, dinner at a rooftop spot she'd once called too flashy for us, a spa treatment, 2 movie tickets. 2, and the hotel? It wasn't booked under her name. I stared at the alias, Sarah T., not Amelia, not even close. I tried not to jump to conclusions. Maybe she was meeting a friend. Maybe she used a fake name for privacy. But those were the excuses you feed yourself when you're trying to bail out a sinking ship. What stung most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the intimacy of the deception. The way she used her sister, the one person I'd never question, as a cover. And worse, the way she lied so effortlessly like it wasn't her first time. Suddenly, memories flooded back like water through a broken levee. Late nights that didn't add up. A hint of unfamiliar perfume on the coat she swore hadn't left the car. The smile that stopped reaching her eyes when I said, "I love you." There's a particular pain that settles in the gut of a man who realizes the love he thought was his is being loaned out to someone else. Not stolen, just offered, freely. A few days later, she came home. I was on the back deck, nursing a coffee, watching the sky bruise into dusk. She pulled into the driveway like it was any other Sunday night. Got out, waved to the neighbor, climbed the steps like she hadn't blown up our marriage with one phone call. "Hey," she said, dropping her bag. "I'm wiped. Leela says hi." I stared at her. "Leela was with me on Friday." That was all I said. She blinked, once, twice, and again silence. I watched her face, waiting for a flicker of remorse, panic, anything human. But she just stood there, arms limp, mouth slightly parted like a woman caught in someone else's life. She didn't cry, didn't shout. She just nodded slowly and brushed past me into the kitchen, like this moment had been scripted and this was her cue to leave. That silence again, dense as stone. She didn't deny it, didn't spin a frantic story. She let the silence carry the weight of the truth because maybe she knew it spoke louder than she ever could. And in that moment, something shifted in me. Not anger, not even grief, just finality. The next morning, I started packing, not her stuff. Mine. I folded clothes into boxes, packed up old novels, took down photos with shaking hands. I found one of us at the river from 4 summers back. She was laughing, leaning into me, and I looked so damn proud just to be next to her. I stared at it for a long time before tucking it into the bottom of a drawer. Couldn't bring myself to throw it out, not yet. When she came downstairs and saw the boxes, she didn't ask why. "I guess this is it," she said, almost like she was relieved. I didn't answer. What was there to say? Leaving a home doesn't feel like leaving a place. It feels like leaving a version of yourself. I packed what mattered, essentials, keepsakes, memories I wasn't ready to destroy, left the key on the counter. I didn't slam the door. I closed it softly. I drove without a plan, just put the car in gear and watched the road stretch out like some kind of hope. The silence in the car wasn't calm. It was loud, brimming with thoughts and questions I didn't have the nerve to ask her before I left. Who was he? Did I know him? Was he worth everything we'd built? But the question that echoed loudest was, when did I stop being enough? That one still lingers, if I'm honest. I ended up at my brother's place, 3 hours away in a quiet hill town where no one cares about your job or your heartbreak. He opened the door, gave me one look and said, "Come in, you look rough." I didn't spill the whole story right away, just said I needed a break. He gave me the guest room and a bottle of whiskey. 2 nights later, I finally said it out loud. She lied about being at her sister's. Leela was with me. The call, it was just silence. He didn't cut in, just nodded and poured another drink. Sometimes that's all you need. Someone who doesn't try to fix it, doesn't push you to move on, just sits with you in the wreckage. Days bled into weeks. I stayed inside mostly, slept too much or not at all, ate when I remembered. I replayed our last year like a detective combing through evidence, searching for the moment it all went wrong. There were signs, of course, missed anniversaries, her sudden obsession with the gym, a new phone passcode. The cold distance masked as exhaustion, but the worst part? The love didn't vanish all at once. It seeped out slowly in forgotten touches, half-hearted smiles, and eyes that were always looking somewhere else. I wanted to blame her. I did. But I kept asking myself, was I still showing up for her like I used to? I remembered the nights I stayed late at work, the distracted replies, the times I stared at my phone instead of her. Maybe I made it easy for her to drift. Maybe I left the space she filled with someone else. That thought hurt more than the betrayal. She didn't call for 3 weeks, not once. Then one afternoon, her name lit up my phone again. I stared at it forever before answering. "Hey," she said like we were old acquaintances. I didn't respond. "I know you probably hate me," she went on, her voice thinner than I remembered. I didn't know how to fix it." "I'm sorry. You're not calling to fix it," I said quietly. "You're calling to feel better." Silence, that silence again. She breathed into the phone. "I didn't mean for it to go that far, it just happened. We were already falling apart, you know?" "No, I didn't know," I said, "because I was still trying." She said my name like it was an apology. I hung up before she could make it worse. A week later, the divorce papers arrived. I hadn't asked for them, but she had. Sent to the old address forwarded by my brother. Clean, professional, no blame, just lines and signatures. I sat with them for a day, then signed. What they don't tell you about divorce is that the real pain isn't in the leaving. It's in the small things after. Waking up and reaching for someone who's gone. Seeing her shampoo in the bathroom. Finding her handwriting on an old note. Smelling her scent on a scarf you forgot to pack. Grief doesn't hit all at once. It ambushes you at the store, in a song, in a dream where she's still smiling like she used to. But slowly, quietly, I started finding a new rhythm. I woke up earlier, took long walks, talked with my brother over coffee. Started journaling, not to hold on, but to let go. I wrote about our fights, the moments that still stung, the ways I failed her and the ways she failed me. Some days I wrote to her not to send, just to say what I couldn't when I was trying to keep us together. One entry read, "You said you needed space, and I gave it to you. But I didn't know I was giving you room to forget me." 3 months later, Leela texted me. One line, "I didn't know either, I'm sorry." We met at a diner halfway between our towns. She looked worn, tired, but real. She hugged me longer than I expected. "I thought she was just going through something," she said over coffee. "I didn't know about the guy. If I had," I nodded. "You don't have to explain." We sat in silence for a bit, a gentler silence. "There were moments," she said finally, "where I could tell she was pulling away from you. I thought you'd pull her back." "I tried," I whispered. "I know." Before we parted, she pulled a photo from her bag us from 4 summers ago on her birthday. Amelia and me, smiling, hands linked when everything felt simple. "I thought you should have it," she said. I didn't know whether to thank her or break down, so I just nodded. It's strange how love becomes memory, how someone who was your world becomes just someone you knew. But there's peace in knowing you stayed true, that you held on until the end, even if she let go. That matters even if no one else sees it. It's been a year now, 12 months since that night, since her voice broke on the phone and the truth slipped in like a chill through an open window. Since I left with a heart half broken, half silent. People ask how I'm doing and I give the safe answer. Better. It's true in a way, but healing's messy, not a straight path. Some mornings I feel whole. Others I still reach for her out of habit, but I don't miss her anymore. I miss the woman I thought she was. That's a quieter grief, a private one. You don't mourn what you lost. You mourn what was never really there. I moved into a small place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, creaky floors that groan every time I think I'm alone with my thoughts. But I like it. For weeks I left the spare room empty, like I was holding space for something, or someone, that wasn't coming back. Eventually I made it a study, got a cheap desk, a lamp, a used leather chair. Started writing again, not just journals, but stories, letters I'll never send. Some are about her. Most are about me. One night, walking through the neighborhood, I passed a couple laughing on their porch. Her head rested on his shoulder. He kissed her hair like it was instinct. I smiled and kept walking. That used to hurt, seeing others happy. Now it's like watching a familiar film. I know the story, the sweetness, and how quickly it can sour. But I'm not bitter. If anything, I'm clearer about the love I deserve, one that doesn't need lies to thrive, one that's steady, honest, even if it's ordinary. Amelia reached out twice more. Once in spring, once in summer. The second time she asked to meet, I hesitated but agreed. Same diner, different table, different season, same weight in my chest. She looked smaller, not physically, just less vibrant, like someone who'd lost the person who used to see her as everything. She didn't cry. I think she'd already done that. "I ruined everything," she said. I didn't argue. She said the guy was gone, that it fizzled out. "He wasn't what I thought," she said. I almost laughed but didn't. "He wasn't you," she added softly. There it was, the open door, the faint pull back to a place I'd sworn I'd never go. I looked at her, really looked, and saw a woman I used to love, a woman who made mistakes, who hurt me deeply, who I no longer belonged to. "I hope you find peace," I said, standing. She reached for my hand. I let her hold it for a moment, then pulled away. Forgiveness isn't always an invitation. Sometimes it's just letting go. Now I spend more time outside. I've taken up gardening. Laughable, I know, me in muddy boots, coaxing peppers to grow like they owe me. But there's something soothing about it, watching things bloom slowly, even when the soil's tough or the light's wrong. Sometimes all it takes is time and quiet care. Like me, I suppose. I ran into Leela a few weeks ago at the grocery store with Nate. We talked briefly. She's pregnant now. I hugged her and meant it. As I turned to go, she said, "You seem okay." I paused. "I am," I said, and for the first time in a long time, I meant it. There's a letter in my desk drawer, folded neatly in a notebook, addressed to Amelia. I wrote it one sleepless night, not to win her back, but to understand. It says, "You could have told me you were unhappy. You could have said you felt alone, unseen, forgotten. I would have tried. I would have fought for us. But you chose a cheap lie over a hard truth. I'm not angry anymore. I just wish I hadn't learned the truth from silence. That call broke us, but the silence after ended it. I hope you find someone who sees you, and I hope you choose honesty when it counts." I'll never send it. But writing it helped. If you're reading this and you felt the quiet after betrayal, know this. You don't need to fill that silence with noise, not with anger, revenge, or desperate attempts to feel whole. Sometimes silence is the clearest answer. It tells you when it's over, when to walk away, and if you listen closely, when you're finally free. That night, when she said she was at her sister's while her sister sat beside me, that silence hit like a truck. Now it's just a memory, a scar, not a wound. And the silence I wake to now, it doesn't hurt, it heals.